All right. Well, welcome to class, everybody, and happy middle of the week. Happy hump day. Since this is Black History Month, I have been highlighting some scientists who are people of color. And so today's scientist that I'm highlighting is Thelma Madzima. And she is a native of Zimbabwe, but now works at the University of Washington. And she is a corn breeder, and so she studies regulation of gene expression in corn. Corn is one of many model organisms that scientists study, and it's really an important food crop, and so a lot of scientists study corn. There's a Bethel University alumnus who is part of a nonprofit in Kenya, and he studies corn breeding, and his organization is working on producing crops that are better suited to growth in dry conditions and warm conditions. And so studying genetics in corn is one way that you can make the world a better place and help produce food for people all over the world. So that's today's highlight. We are moving on in our study of animals into circulation and gas exchange. So we're moving into chapter 42, and I'll just use this figure to just kind of remind you where we are. So this course is all about energy, metabolism, and biodiversity. And so we've been looking at how animals get energy. And remember that animals get all their energy from what they eat, from food. And so we've been studying the digestion and absorption process in animals. And then just remember that every process that happens in animals releases heat because of the second law of thermodynamics. And some of the food that animals eat is not going to be digested and is going to be lost as feces. So some of the energy that's stored in that food will come out in the feces. And then so then what happens after digestion and absorption? Well, those nutrient molecules that that are the result of digestion, so the amino acids and the simple sugars, the monosaccharides, and the nucleotides and the fatty acids and the glycerol, all those products of digestion are going to be used by the body both for making other molecules in biosynthesis and for cellular respiration, which produces the ATP that is needed for doing cellular work. So what we're going to explore now is how these molecules get from where they're digested and absorbed to the body cells where cellular respiration happens. So my questions today are going to focus on what materials do cells need, and then how do these materials get to the cells. So with your lab partner, one of you send a private chat to the other one answering this first question: what materials do cells need for cellular respiration? And then the other person in your partnership can respond with, how do these materials get to the cells? So ready, go. Answer these two questions with your lab partner in private chats. Okay, so I'm going to call first today on Hunter Pratt. So Hunter, can you tell me what materials do cells need for cellular respiration?
They need oxygen and glucose.
Very good. So now, Lily, can you tell us how these materials, the oxygen and the glucose, get to the cells? Start out with glucose. How does glucose get to the body cells?
Um, we don't really know, but we were thinking like maybe through the blood.
Okay, so first of all, the food has to be digested so that the glucose is available. And then you are absolutely right. Then the blood carries the glucose from the digestive system all over the body until it gets delivered to the cells. Oxygen is going to come in through the lungs, and then it's also going to have to be transported through the blood. So very good. So in humans, at least, we need blood in order to transport nutrient molecules to the cells where the cellular respiration happens, and also to cells where the carbon skeletons are going to be made into other molecules. So these steps here happen in the cells, and so we need kind of an intermediate transportation system, and in humans, that's blood. So our learning objectives to start out with here in chapter 42 are to be able to differentiate between the two main solutions that animals have for exchanging materials between body cells and the environment. And then we'll be more specific about circulatory systems, which is one of the solutions. And then I want you to be able to trace the pathway that oxygen, CO2, and nutrients travel through the cardiovascular systems of various animals. So let's get to the two main solutions. And this should seem familiar to you because we talked about it in terms of digestion as well. So animals either have to have a body plan, a simple body plan that keeps all or most cells in contact with the environment, or they have to have some sort of a circulatory system that is able to move fluid between the cells, the body cells, and the tissues where exchanges occur. So let's look first at a body plan that keeps all or most cells in contact with the environment. And we're going to see some animals that we've seen before and we've talked about before in terms of digestion, and then we'll just talk about it in terms of gas exchange. So the first animal that I will remind you of is the sponges. And you can see living sponges in that saltwater tank in the hallway outside of the aquatics room where you go to pick up your fish for your lab. So there are some live sponges, and they have a very thin body wall. And what happens is their cells, there's two main cell types. There's this outer cell type, kind of a epidermal cell type, and then there's these inner cells that are called the choanocytes. And both of these two cells are very close either to the environment or to the environment that's on the inside of the sponge. And really, this environment is the same. This is salt water out here, and this is salt water in here, and water flows through the pores, and the sponge cells, either the choanocytes or these epidermal cells, or there's also these amoebocytes in the middle here. All of those cells are close enough to the surface of the animal that they can get the materials they need, either the food, nutrients, or the oxygen that they need just from diffusion from the environment. Another animal that has a very thin body wall is a hydra. And so many animals that have a simple body plan have a gastrovascular cavity, which has the role both of digesting the food that they ingest And also this cavity has branches all over the body. And so it also acts in distributing the nutrients all over the body. And then these animals have very thin body walls, and so they can rely on diffusion of gases from either the external or from the gastrovascular cavity to get the gases to the cells, to and from the cells. So this figure from chapter 41 specifically shows food and nutrients, but diffusion of gases occurs really easily across this thin body wall. And then another animal with a gastrovascular cavity is the planarian, which is a type of flatworm. It has a very flat body. And in fact, I'm going to show you a video of this. Let's see, here's the video of this. We're going to get rid of that. And we will maximize this. We have to get past the ad here. And, well, we have to get past another ad. Here we go. So here you see a planarian, and this is magnified 40x. So they're 40 times smaller than this. You can see their eye spots. You can see they're very flat. And I'm going to just show about 30 seconds of this video. This is a big jar that is holding planaria. And then this video is going to focus in so you can see here's the planarian, here's another one down here. So they're very tiny organisms and super flat. This next segment of the video illustrates this very well. Again, this is magnified 10 times. And you can see over here how flat this animal is. And here's another view of it swimming along. And here's some more. So you get the idea that they are very flat animals. Okay, so we're going to stop that and we're going to go back to our PowerPoint. And so again, this picture that we have here is really nicely showing how the gastrovascular cavity is branching all over their body. So the gastrovascular cavity is distributing the nutrients all over their body, and their body is so flat that gases can easily diffuse from the outside of their body into the cells. So let's answer this question just to review kind of gastrovascular cavities. Send me your answer in a private chat message to me. Okay, notice that this question is asking which feature is impossible for animals with gastrovascular cavities. A couple of people have said A, and I think they've kind of gotten that backwards, but most of you are saying D, and that is correct. Animals with gastrovascular cavities have to have a thin body wall, which could be a flat body or it could be like a hydra. And so they cannot have a body with many cell layers because diffusion is not sufficient to distribute nutrients from the gastrovascular cavity to the cells if the body had lots of cell layers. So instead, excuse me, the second okay, I had to mute myself so I could cough a little bit. So instead of having a flat body, some animals have circulatory systems. And so concept 42.1, the main concept in this concept is that circulatory systems link exchange surfaces with cells throughout the body. I just wanted to check to make sure I'm recording. Okay, so circulatory systems link exchange surfaces with cells throughout the body. So that brings up the question of what exactly are the exchange surfaces in the human body? So to answer this, send a private chat to your lab partner. What are the exchange surfaces in the human body? There are at least 3 exchange surfaces. What are the exchange surfaces in the human body? Okay, Laura Charlotte, can you identify one of the exchange surfaces in the human body?
It occurs in the alveoli in the lungs, right?
Yes, very good. So the alveoli in the lungs is definitely the exchange surface between the air in the lungs and the blood. So the exchange surface is kind of like the inside of the alveolus wall and the wall of the capillary. So that is where gases are exchanged between the blood and the lungs. So another one would be like the digestive system. And so we'll just look at this figure that is a kind of stylized animal. And so the exchange surface that Laura Charlotte talked about is right here between the blood and the alveoli. The alveoli are the tiny little sacs in the lungs. So oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood, and carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood into the alveolus. There's also an exchange surface between the digestive system and the circulatory system. And you should know that that exchange surface is that epithelial wall, or that endothelial wall in the small intestine, and food or nutrients, I should say, can cross between the small intestine into either a capillary or a lacteal in each villus, in those villi of the small intestine. And then the third one that we haven't really talked about would be the tubules in the kidneys, would be the exchange surface for waste products leaving the blood and getting into the excretory system. And then here's a fourth one, and that would be the exchange between a blood capillary and body cells. And so there's the wall of the capillary and then the interstitial fluid, which is the fluid that is outside of the cells and also outside of the circulatory system. So those are the exchange surfaces. There are 4 main exchange surfaces shown in this figure, and that is the digestive system exchange, the respiratory system exchange, the exchange between the body cells and the blood, and then the excretory system exchange. All right, so let's focus on the circulatory system. Notice that the circulatory system is at the heart, yeah, pun intended, of the whole animal. So the circulatory system is really necessary to transport nutrients all over the body, to transport oxygen all over the body. So we're going to focus today on the circulatory system. So basic components of the circulatory system, and I think you answered this in your reading assignment for today. The three main components are a muscular pump, which in vertebrates is the heart, a circulatory fluid, which in us is the blood, and then a set of interconnecting vessels, the arteries, veins, capillaries in vertebrates. So these are the main components. Now, there are all different kinds of circulatory systems. So let's start with invertebrates. And many invertebrates have what is known as an open circulatory system. An open circulatory system is one where the circulatory fluid does not always stay in the blood vessels. So the blood vessels are not a closed system. So the circulatory fluid is pumped by one or more hearts, and then it goes through some vessels, and then it comes out of those blood vessels and it just bathes the organs. So in an open circulatory system, the fluid that is around the cells, the interstitial fluid, is the same fluid as the fluid that is circulating and is getting pumped by the heart. And so we call this fluid hemolymph to kind of emphasize that it's both blood and interstitial fluid. It's both the circulatory fluid and it's also the fluid that is exchanging directly with the cells. And so the fluid, this circulatory fluid, the hemolymph, when it comes out of the blood vessels, it goes into sinuses, which are the spaces surrounding the organs. A sinus is a general anatomical word for a cavity or kind of an open space. And so we have sinuses in the bones, like in our facial bones, like in the frontal bone and in our cheekbone, and in our nasal bones. So those are cavities within those bones. And a sinus, a circulatory sinus, would be like a cavity that an organ is found in, and the blood would fill that cavity. Our sinuses in our facial bones are not full of blood, so they're a little bit different. So here's a diagram that illustrates how this would work in an insect like a grasshopper. So you can see that there are tubular hearts up here, kind of on the back, the dorsal side of this animal, and they pump blood out through these blood vessels, and you can see these blood vessels are short, and then the blood is just kind of bathing this whole inner space. And so here you see the digestive organs that we already talked about with the grasshopper, and the blood is just kind of filling this space, this sinus surrounding the organs. Except we don't call it blood, we call it hemolymph. So let's make sure that everybody's paying attention. Answer this question in a private chat message to me. The fluid that moves around in the circulatory system of a typical arthropod is what? This is one of those questions that I hope everybody gets right. Okay, 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so almost everybody said the hemolymph, and that is correct. The fluid that moves in the circulatory system is the same as the interstitial fluid, and because of that, we call it hemolymph. By the way, A and E are really the same. The intracellular fluid is the cytosol. That's the fluid that's inside cells. The blood plasma is that really that answer doesn't really make sense because yeah, we call it hemolymph. Okay, let's move on. All right, so a closed circulatory system is what we have, and in us, the blood is confined to the heart and the blood vessels, and it is distinct from the interstitial fluid. So in animals with a closed circulatory system, there would be intracellular fluid, the cytosol, there would be interstitial fluid, there would be the circulatory fluid, the blood, and the liquid of that is the plasma. And then also there would be the lymph, which is the fluid in the lymphatic system. So those are kind of the fluid compartments in an animal with a closed circulatory system. In an animal with an open circulatory system, there's really just intracellular fluid and hemolymph. So here is a diagram that illustrates the circulatory system of an earthworm, which is an animal that has a closed circulatory system. And you can see that they have several hearts, which pump the blood from their dorsal blood vessel. And to remember dorsal, think that, I always think of, okay, so sharks have a dorsal fin. So that's the back of an animal. And then the ventral would be the belly side. So in an earthworm, the blood is pumped from the dorsal blood vessel down to the ventral blood vessel. And then the blood in the ventral vessels goes toward the tail or toward the posterior, and the blood in the dorsal vessel is going toward the head or toward the anterior end. So blood kind of circulates like this. And then there are connecting vessels between the dorsal and the ventral blood vessels. And so mostly the blood is going up through those. But notice that the blood is going to stay within the blood vessels all the time. So there is a separate interstitial fluid as shown up here in this diagram. You have the blood pumping, the heart pumping the blood, which then is going to go through capillaries and then is going to go back into the heart. And then the interstitial fluid is separate from that. And so having a closed circulatory system means that the heart can generate more pressure, which means that the animal can be much larger. And in fact, earthworms can be quite large. This is my boot, and this is showing a giant earthworm in Ecuador. Here's yet another reason to go on the Ecuador trip. You might get a chance to see a giant earthworm, and you might get a chance to pick one up. Wouldn't that be fun? What do you think, Laura? Laura's kind of smiling like skeptically, like, I don't know. Kylie, did you guys see a giant earthworm when you went to Ecuador?
No, we didn't, sadly.
Oh, I don't know if you lucked out or if you kind of like missed your chance. Okay, so I would like you to answer this question. You can chat with your lab partner again on this one. What are the benefits of open systems? What are the benefits of closed circulatory systems? And I'll give you a minute or two and then I will call on somebody. Private chat with your lab partner. Or with me if your lab partner is not here. Okay. I'm getting lots of private chats from people whose lab partners aren't here. So that suggests to me that you guys have had time to think about this. So let me hear from, let's see, Michelle Cutlin.
We said that one advantage of a closed system is that they're well suited to regulate the distribution of blood to different organs.
Yep, good answer. Okay. How about Ben Terpster? How about another advantage? How about an advantage of an open circulatory system? Did you guys come up with anything? Ben Terpster.
The body temperature ends up having better control.
With the open system?
Yes.
I think that a closed system allows you to regulate body temperature like in different parts of your body a little differently. So like maybe, so we saw that with the countercurrent exchange with the goose, so it could have really cold feet and the rest of its body could be warmer. And that was only possible with a closed system. But maybe there's logic behind open circulatory systems helping with that. Let's see. Here's the ones that I have. So the open circulatory system, I think the main advantage of that is that it requires less energy of the animal. So the animal doesn't have to expend as much energy to generate lots of pressure within the circulatory fluid. And then secondly, sometimes the open circulatory system can serve some other role, like the fluid from the circulatory system would fill up the wings of a butterfly and help to expand those wings. That's one example of another role that it might play. And then the closed circulatory system, I think the main advantage is that it can generate higher pressure. And so this means that it can deliver materials even to large-bodied animals. So we can have animals like hippos and elephants and giraffes where the heart pumps the blood way up to the head and way down to the feet. So that would not be possible with an open circulatory system. And then, as Michelle said, you can regulate the circulation to different body parts. So when it's cold, you can use vasoconstriction to not send as much blood to the surface of the body. Or you can send a lot of blood to your digestive system when you're digesting food, and you know, you can regulate where the blood goes, where blood goes. Okay, so let's focus on the vertebrate circulatory system, also known as the cardiovascular system. And this is a type of closed circulatory system. And there's still some variation within the closed circulatory systems. So what I would like you guys to do is see if you can write down definitions for these terms: arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, veins. These are the kinds of blood vessels. And then, yeah. And you had a little bit of practice on this with your reading assignment. So let's see, Lauren Colley, can you tell us the main difference between the arteries and the veins?
The arteries carry the O2 rich blood away from the heart, and the veins go towards the heart with deoxygenated blood, right?
Okay, so that was half right. So the arteries carry blood away from the heart, and the veins carry blood toward the heart. But some arteries do not carry O2 rich blood. So the name of the arteries and the veins, the main thing about them is the direction that the blood is going. So arteries are carrying blood away from the heart, veins are carrying blood back to the heart. But think about the blood that is going from the heart to the lungs. That blood is going to be low in oxygen, and coming through the veins, the pulmonary veins coming back from the lungs, they're going to be high in oxygen. So arteries are carrying blood away, and veins are carrying blood toward the heart. And then arterioles, the arteries are going to branch down into smaller vessels called arterioles. So they're still carrying blood away from the heart. And then they branch further into very tiny little blood vessels called capillaries. Capillaries are microscopic. They're so small, some of them, that red blood cells have to go through one at a time. So they're just big enough for one red blood cell at a time, some of them. And then the capillaries collect into venules, and the venules collect into veins, and then the veins bring the blood back to the heart. Okay, so now what I would like you to do is I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and I'm going to ask you to use the whiteboard in Zoom. And so the way you get to your whiteboard is one of you is going to click on screen sharing, and you're going to choose the whiteboard. And then I think mostly that person, I just forgot to set up a Jamboard for you guys. But so we'll use the Zoom whiteboard instead. And so I want you to draw a single circulation system and a double circulation system. And for both those systems, you need to show the heart, the blood vessels, the respiratory capillaries, and the body cell capillaries. So I'm going to set up your Zoom breakout rooms, and you guys can, here, I'll move this out of the way. You guys can take a screenshot of this. And then I'm going to go ahead and assign these rooms, and I'm going to go ahead and open these rooms, and ready, go. All right, well, good work, you guys. I will try to look at these and give you a little bit of feedback in the next day or two. I didn't have a chance to look at all of them, but at least the ones that were on Jamboard. So I'm guessing that a lot of you guys prefer working on Jamboard because a lot of people joined that Jamboard. So, and I think that the Zoom whiteboard is kind of clunky and it seems like only one person can write on it at a time. So it's not the best platform. So Jamboard is great. All right. So here is a figure from our textbook that illustrates single circulation. And you can see that the heart pumps blood into an artery. This is an artery that is carrying blood that's low in oxygen because it's going first into the gills, and it's in the gills where the blood is going to pick up oxygen from the water. And then the blood goes through some blood vessels to another set of capillaries. And so these blood vessels would be high in oxygen. These might be, I'm not really sure what they call these blood vessels that go between the gills and all the other body cells. They might be called portal veins because a portal vein connects one capillary bed with another capillary bed. And then after the blood goes through the body cells, it's going to deliver oxygen to those cells. So this blood coming back to the heart in the vein will be low in blood and going to be low in blood going out of the heart as well. So this is just one loop. The blood is going to make a full circuit in just one loop. Notice that there are only two chambers in this heart. There is an atrium, which is a receiving chamber, receiving blood coming from the vein, and then blood gets pumped from the atrium into the ventricle. And the ventricle is the larger and more muscular chamber that pumps blood out. So only two chambers, only one atrium and one ventricle in a single circulation. Then here is a double circulation. And in this pathway, you can follow the blood that is leaving from the right side of the heart to the right ventricle through the pulmonary artery to the lungs, back through the pulmonary vein into the left side of the heart. And this would be this panda as it's looking at us. So the left side of the heart, it would be the panda's left side of the heart. And so blood from the left side of the heart gets pumped out through the aorta and to arteries going all over the body to what we call systemic capillaries in the systemic circuit. And then those collect into veins and eventually into the vena cava that carry blood back into the right side of the heart. So notice that there are two atria, the right atrium and the left atrium, and two ventricles, the right ventricle and the left ventricle, in this particular double circulation. And notice that this requires there to be a wall in the middle of the heart, dividing the left side of the heart from the right side of the heart. And this dividing wall is called the septum, which is a general anatomic word that just means wall. So you also have a septum in your nose that divides your nose into your right nostril and your left nostril. So a septum is just a wall. Earthworms have septa in between each segment, or a wall in between each segment. So this is the septum in the heart. And notice that there are variations. So what I've shown you here, or what I showed you on the previous slide, is a 4-chambered heart with a double circulation. Excuse me. But amphibians just have a 3-chamber heart. They only have one ventricle. They do have 2 atria, but their ventricle is not divided by a septum. So they still have a double circulation. In their double circulation, instead of it being a lung circuit or a pulmonary circuit, in the amphibians, it's called a pulmocutaneous circuit because they absorb a lot of gases through their skin. They do a lot of gas exchange with their skin. So pulmocutaneous, cutaneous meaning skin. And notice that the blood coming back from the lungs and the skin is going to mix in the ventricle with blood that's coming from the body. And so that's why it's kind of shown purple here. So there's a little mixing of the oxygenated and the deoxygenated in this 3-chambered heart. In reptiles like snakes and lizards, there is a dividing wall that is incomplete. So there is a little bit better separation of the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. And they also have another blood vessel besides the aorta. They actually have 2 aortas, the right aorta and the left aorta. And sometimes they can cut off blood to this right aorta, and this allows them to really regulate how much blood goes to different parts of their body. And then there's the full 4-chambered heart like what we have. So reptiles have a partially divided ventricle. Amphibians don't have a division in their ventricle at all. So lots of variation in circulatory systems in vertebrates. Birds, by the way, are classified in the same clade as reptiles. Nobody would really say that birds are the same as reptiles, but birds and reptiles are classified. They are thought to have branched off from the mammals, or actually the mammals branched off from the reptiles. And so there is no group that is its own separate branch that's called the reptiles, because there are branches called birds and mammals that come off of that. Anyway, that is a little bit of phylogenetics for you. So, but birds have a 4-chambered heart. They need to have a very efficient respiratory system because it takes a lot of energy to fly. And so they have to have very efficient delivery of oxygen to their cells in order to generate that energy that they need. Okay, so let's do this multiple choice question. Answer it in the private chat to me. An adaptive advantage of having a 3-chambered heart as found in amphibians over the 2-chambered heart of fish is what? How is the 3-chambered heart better or more beneficial to the amphibians compared to the 2-chamber heart of the fish? All right, I am seeing lots of different answers to this. I don't think I could say most of you said something or other. There's a lot of variation in your answers. And actually, not very many people are saying the correct answer. So the correct answer to this question is C, that fully oxygenated blood, the advantage is that this fully oxygenated blood can undergo additional pumping to reach higher pressures. None of the rest of these are true. So C is the correct answer, and that's the advantage of having a double loop circulation. So let's go back and look at this picture. Here's the single loop circulation. And notice that the heart pumps the blood into the gills and the blood is not pumped again. And so this is going to be really low pressure blood that's going through the rest of the body. And compare this with, compare this with the amphibians, the blood coming back from the lungs that is fully oxygenated, even though it mixes a little bit with this deoxygenated blood, it's going to get pumped again. So that is a little bit more efficient at delivering the oxygenated blood to the body. So the best answer is C, that there's that this double circulation generates more force. Okay, so our next thing is mammalian circulation. And so since we're going into a new kind of section and we only have 5 minutes, I think what I will do is I will stop our time for now and we will pick up on this on Friday. So enjoy the rest of your day. If you have questions, you can hang around. Otherwise, I will see you on Friday.